Hi everyone, my name is David Park and I'm the CEO of Beat the GMAT. This is the second of our series of 9 essay workshops, and I'm very pleased to welcome you today as we walk through the Stanford GSB admissions essays for this year. I'm especially excited for 2 reasons. One is Stanford's in our backyard. We're in the Bay Area, and we love Stanford, and there are a lot of great entrepreneurs who came out of Stanford. So Eric and I and B really have a lot of respect for the school. Secondly, I'm excited because Katie works with Stacy Blackman. And for those of you who've been with Beat the GMAT for a while, you may know our history, but we've been working with Stacy Blackman for ever since the beginning of Beat the GMAT, which is about 4 or 5 years ago. And therefore, just having Stacy and her team and Katie here with us is a real privilege. So with that being said, I'll give the floor to Katie, who is admissions expert with Stacy Blackman Consulting. Very excited to have you here, Katie.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. So I think Stacy had a great presentation, and she'll introduce a little bit of herself also at the beginning of the presentation. But I did want to say one thing, which is that in addition to, Stacy has a great academic background, but Katie has a great academic background, but in addition to that, she worked for Teach for America, which for those of you who aren't in the U.S., it's just a phenomenal organization that's very selective. So she has a lot of experience in recruiting and admissions. So great. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm going to go ahead and put the presentation up on the screen and talk through it and introduce myself via that.
Great.
Great. So give me just 1 second as I put the presentation up for you all. Sorry. Okay, I think it should be up. Yeah?
Yes, it is up. Yes,
yeah.
Great.
Okay, good. Just checking because you can see, but I can't. So, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Katie Malachuk. I've been an admissions consultant with Stacy Blackman Consulting since 2005. I did my undergrad at Harvard, and after I was at Harvard, I taught 3rd grade with Teach for America, and then I worked for Teach for America, and I was their director of admissions, which is similar to being the director of admissions at a college or a graduate school. After Teach for America, I went to Stanford for business school, and I live in New York now, and I miss it greatly out there, so I'm quite jealous of all you folks at Beat the GMAT with Stanford in your backyard. But I loved business school at Stanford. It was a dynamic and inspiring experience. And then afterwards, I worked for the Boston Consulting Group. I didn't really like corporate life so much, and I left the Boston Consulting Group, and then I worked for an education startup, and then I left corporate world in general. That's when I started working with Stacy, and I also became a yoga teacher. And through this work of helping people apply to schools while also teaching people yoga, I ended up writing a couple of books. The first one was for undergraduates, and it came out last year, and it's called You're Accepted, and it helps people applying to college find that sense of self-acceptance on the way to school acceptance. And then my book for MBA applicants just came out this past August, and it's called Earn It, and you will certainly hear themes of that of my message in the book coming through today as we talk about the Stanford essay application. So let's go and get into the Stanford essay. So what matters most to Stanford? They say they're looking for outstanding individuals and the very qualities that define you make the GSB a stimulating place to learn. And that's true, but it also sounds like a bunch of jargon. So we'll sort through that a little bit more. They're looking for people who make an impact, who are passionate, who have vision, who can work on a team and lead a team, but also know how to follow when they're on a team, who are interested in the world beyond themselves and the broader community, who are intelligent and dynamic, who are self-aware, who have integrity, and who are interested in the larger global environment that we exist in. And, I'll also say this of Stanford. It's one of the top business schools in the country, and it has a great reputation. And what the admissions committee understands is that once you graduate with Stanford on your resume, you're going to have quite a bit of power in the world. And from my take on that, and I approached this in the book, I approached an application process in the book this way, but, to whom much is given, much is required. And so this application process, when you're considering schools like Stanford, should really be a process of self-discovery where you think about how you, with your specific gifts and values, can uniquely impact the world. And fortunately, the essay topics give you some prompts and questions and some, just an opportunity for you to really think about who you are and how you would like to live your life. Because when you graduate from one of these schools, you're going to have so many options, and you should know how you like to make use of them. So that's just a more, I think a higher level way of thinking about what's important to Stanford, and I think it's helpful to consider that idea of to whom much is given, much is required when you're going through these essays. Now, here's some age-old writing advice before we get into the specific essays. You have to show Stanford. You can't just tell them that these are your values and here's what's important to you. You have to illustrate your responses through examples throughout your life. But as I'll discuss with the first essay, those examples will also help you understand what's important to your life. So with that, let's get going into the very first essay. I think this is after working for years and years on all the different schools with many applicants, this remains my favorite essay question, and it is what matters most to you and why. And honestly, I think every human being should have to write an essay about this at the start of every year so that you clarify who you are. Now, our first tip on this is to take a deep breath, and they want you to use this as a process to look inside and express clearly what is there for them. So, tip 2, this answer is essentially a statement of life purpose. They're asking you to look for a particular value or a set of values and write about it. Now, I'm going to spend some time here on this tip and talk about the idea of values. Values are what shine forth our purpose in our life. Our values are a set of things that are important to us that we often just arrive here with. Sometimes they develop through our lives, or sometimes we've just known them from the very beginning. But a lot of times what we think our values aren't necessarily our values. Many times when people have experiences that don't feel good to them, or jobs that don't feel good to them, or relationships that don't feel good to them, it's because those are violating their core sense of values. By the same token, the things that do feel good, the jobs that surprised you because they felt good, or the relationships or just the experiences that felt good, those were affirming your values. So your values might be a little different than you think. And doing some soul searching up front before you answer this essay question will make it much easier to answer this essay question. So I suggest before you try to get calculated about, okay, what are my values when you go to approach this, is to ask yourself a couple of questions about your life. And I always have my applicants journal a little bit before they get going. And that sounds like really cheesy sort of Oprah advice, but it really helps to get the wheels turning on what's important to you. So some ideas that you could write about are, think about a time when life was great. And write about it. What was special about that time? What stood out about it to you? It could be a job that you had. It could be a 5-minute experience that you had. It could be something completely outside of work. But just sometime when life felt great and easy. Another question you could ask yourself around this is, what's a piece of work that you're most proud of? Or what are great lessons that you've learned in your lifetime? Or even the question of, think about a time that wasn't great. What values do you think were being violated during that time? And you can use those sorts of prompts to help your own life reveal to you what your values are. And you'll start to see themes come up. Maybe there's values of adventure, impact, or maybe beauty or helping people, or maybe play or compassion. You'll start to see a list of a few that are very important to you. And from there, you'll have what you'd like to write about for what matters most to you and why. You'll know what matters most to you. So the soul searching needs to come first. The thinking needs to come first before you start writing. And then tip 3 is the writing. So your answer needs to be supported by evidence from your life. Now, you will have already done some brain brainstorming in order to even find your answer. You will have already been thinking about your life and your experiences, so now you get to talk to schools, talk to Stanford about that. And I do recommend telling stories. Tell them stories about what's happened in your life. This goes back to the idea of show, don't tell. Great writing is great storytelling. Now, the other thing that's important is don't get caught up, though, on just telling the stories. You have to say why the story mattered to you, what you learned from it. So you'll see our quote here from Derek Bolton, the director of admissions, and I'd agree with him that the most common mistake applicants make is spending too much time describing the what and not enough time describing how these forces have shaped your lives. So don't just write them a pretty story. You have to set up the situation, explain what happened, but really focus on your reflection and what you learned from that and how your values developed. So that's the first essay. What matters most to you and why? The second essay that they do, and they're smart in making this the second essay because then they ask, well, what are your career aspirations? And what do you need to learn at Stanford to achieve them? So your career aspirations should reflect your values, not simply so that you have good essays for Stanford, but so that your life feels good while you live it. And I think that a lot of times people get a little backwards and they're like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Okay, here's why. It's more important to think about those values first, and that's why Stanford asks you that question first. So you should express your enthusiasm for your career with a career vision statement. And I would say around this point, what we really mean is that you should let your values be echoed in this career vision statement. You know, the word enthusiasm originally means inspiration. So one of those questions you could ask yourself around values or what purpose do you feel called to fulfill? And that might sound like very, pie in the sky or perhaps dreaming too big or maybe out of the scope for business school admissions essays. But I'm telling you, when you graduate with these names for these schools on your resume, if you graduate from Stanford, you're going to have so many options as to what to do with your life. So it is the time now to think about a purpose that you actually feel called to fulfill. So you want to come up with a career statement that reflects your values and your enthusiasm for this. Let yourself dream big and state clearly for them what you'd like to do. Now, this doesn't mean you have to have a very perfect 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan. I think that's unrealistic for most people. And to be honest, I've been out of school for a little over 5 years now. Everybody's doing something different than when they started, and we're all certainly doing different things than what we said we were going to be doing on our applications, right? Life changes, and Stanford understands that. So I think in stating clearly what you want to do, you should know what's important to you, know those values, know how you would like to impact the world, big thoughts on what you'd like to do, and then a few ways in which you think that could happen. When I applied to school, I had several different ways in which I thought I was going to do the career I was going to do. So tip 2 is to explain why you're committed to these career aspirations. So one aspect of that are, of course, your values, right? As we said before, explain how your values from before are echoed in this career aspiration. And then 2, talk about how you are the person who can do this, whatever this is for our world. What are your unique gifts? How do they combine with your values to lead you to this purpose that you feel called to fulfill? Oftentimes applicants wonder, how can I distinguish myself from other people? Maybe it's by having really outlandish extracurriculars, but really the way you distinguish yourself is in how you talk about lessons learned, in how you, just the unique life experiences that you have had and how those have shaped your career aspirations. So you need to talk to them about your values, what your natural gifts are, and why these will help you with your career aspirations. So they want to know what is unique about you. Now then the next question they've asked you is what you need to learn at Stanford to achieve them. So you need to tell Stanford what's unique about Stanford. And, I've heard this from the admissions committee there, that oftentimes people will answer very well why business school, but not why Stanford. So you need to do your homework on specific programs, classes, professors, the culture, education, classmates, whatever it is about Stanford that makes it the place that you want to go. I want to underscore the importance of professors because they were a really big part of my business school experience. Stanford is a small school, and that should be something you consider when you're applying. You're going to know your classmates very well, and you're going to have the opportunity to get to know your professors very well. So look at who's there and think about who you want to study with and get to know. They've continued to mentor me years after graduation in many ways. They're wonderful people. And I know that everyone says do your homework on schools, but truth be told, when I see, applicants come to us with a reapplication, I look at what they've done and they didn't do their homework on schools. Or even first drafts, I would see with clients and working with them, they didn't really do their homework. So you need to get very specific about why you want to go there and why Stanford's, the only place that you want to go to do this. That you are going to accept their offer. This is the place where you want to make your dreams happen. So be sure to answer both aspects of this question. What are your career aspirations and what do you need to learn at Stanford to achieve them? Oh, I have one more thought I just wanted to add. Notice the word learn. A lot of times people forget actually about the academic experience of business school. They do get caught up on extracurriculars, culture, even extracurriculars that relate to their career. Pay attention to the academics. Each of these schools has a specific way in which they set up the first year, in terms of what might be required or not. Look at the academics and the programs and be sure to address that. Okay, essay 3. So they asked for 2. It's really essay 3 and 4, right? They asked for 2 of the following 4 questions. And they have some instructions that they outline at the get-go to help you. Tell us not only what you did, but how you did it. So we've heard this advice before, the how, how do you operate? They're trying to figure out how you operate in situations. They want to know what the outcome was. Do you get results? They want to know how people respond. How do you exist in the world? How do people respond to you and what you do? And they want you to keep it to experiences that occurred within the last 3 years because they're interested in who you are now, not stories from 5-10 years ago from college or high school, unless college was recent. They want to know who you are now. So here are the options. I'll show the options for the essays, and I'll talk about tips. So tell us about a time when you built or developed a team whose performance exceeded expectations. So, how do you operate in the world, and you're also working with the team there? Or tell us about a time when you made a lasting impact on your organization. So you don't have to be the person in charge necessarily. I've seen many essays where the person wasn't the leader of the organization, but rose to the occasion or found a creative way to make a change someplace. The third option, is tell us about a time when you generated support from others for an idea or initiative. You can see that theme of initiation coming up, creativity coming up. They're looking for people who make things happen in the world, again, because they know when you graduate, you're going to be able to make things happen. So they're looking for that. And tell us about a time when you went beyond what was defined, expected, or established. So you're doing more than just living up to the bar. You're raising the bar in your life. Okay, here's the tip 1. And we use this framework called STAR, which is situation, task, action, result. I want to focus on the word action here because the mistake I most often see in this kind of essay is that applicants spend so much time describing a situation. And specifically engineers and those working in finance, I've seen this the most because there's so many details and even just a lot of lexicon that's unfamiliar to other people. So they'll describe the situation in tons of detail and leave no room to describe what they did or what they learned from what they did or how they felt doing it and what the result was. So try to set up the situation quickly and your part in it and describe the action, but also describe how you felt, what you were learning, right? Let them know about your mental and emotional responses to what happens in your life. They want to know how you process things. So in describing the action, don't just make it about what's outward. Go inside and reflect for yourself. And then, of course, they do want to see some results. What happened from that? Results could be lessons learned for you. Results could be something very tangible. Depends on the situation. Here are some more general tips for this third essay. So, tip 2 is that a leadership story features shared achievement. A lot of times in a good effort to show that you're a leader, people will forget that other people were involved, and none of us got to where we are on our own. So a leadership story should show how you worked with others and who else was a champion in this, or who was a challenge and what you learned. One thing I want to say about that is another thing people will do, again, in a good faith effort to show that they were a leader, is they'll say things that aren't so nice about other people dropping the ball so that they had to step up. Make this essay, in this case, about you. You don't know what was going on with other people. You don't know their motivations. It's their brain for them to figure out. Just talk about the situation and you stepping up. You don't need to criticize anybody else. It won't feel good when you're writing that. And, again, you don't know anybody else's life but your own. So shared achievement, let go of the criticism of others in order to make yourself look good. I mean, that's sort of a lesson we learned in kindergarten, but it's one that we need to keep learning as we go through life. A third tip for this set of essays is the scale of the accomplishment is less important than the ability to highlight strengths. So what this means is that you don't have to have done something massive by external or resume standards. And I think people get very intimidated that because they haven't created a company or done some huge deal or traveled somewhere exotic or even gone through something tragic to write about, that they don't have this big accomplishment. It's what you learn from things that makes them interesting, that makes them noteworthy in your life. So looking at your strengths that came out in a situation and what you learned from that situation is much more important than what the actual situation was or the scale of that accomplishment. And tip 4 follows from that in that you can feature stories that are outside of work, especially if they can highlight a passion. So I encourage you not to have your entire application be about work, actually. There are really good opportunities in your extracurricular life outside of work, perhaps your service life outside of work, even in your family life, your personal life. I've seen wonderful essays on, coaching basketball teams, losing tons of weight, dealing with a family crisis. There's so many things that could, that could show strengths of yours and show your reflection in the way that you learn things. So if you can highlight a passion and show strengths with something outside of work, I really encourage you to do it. Again, business school is a very dynamic social experience. Much of what you learn is going to be outside of the classroom, and they want to see that you're someone who, is involved with life. So this tip actually helps you think a little bit about your extracurricular life right now if you're wondering about that as you apply to school. And I've done some videos on Stacey's blog, and the most recent one, I think, was about the extracurriculars and the idea that how you spend your time shows what's important to you. So now as you're going through this process is a good time to look at your life and think, how do I spend my time? Does it show what's important to me? Because hopefully you will have things outside of work for you to write about. Excuse me. So that's the tips for that third set of 2 essays. We're going to go into question and answers in a moment, which I'm looking forward to and hope that you have some. But I do want to highlight that Stacey offers free consultations, and I did these for her for years, and they're really helpful. And you just log on to her website. You'll see the place, I think it says contact us. You'll see free consultation, and you just enter in your information very quickly. Very soon after, a consultant, one of her consultants on her team will get in touch with you. There were a handful of us that did these calls, and you'll talk for 20 to 30 minutes all about your background, any questions that you have about the process, any questions that you have about working with the consultant. Not everyone who does those calls ends up signing up for consulting help. We don't expect them to. And I think they're a great resource. Her consultants are so smart and friendly and helpful, so I would take advantage of that resource. Another thing I want to offer to you is she has a set of essay guides that are much more blown out and thorough companions to these essays beyond these kinds of tips. And she wants to give everyone who's come through Beat the GMAT a 10% discount. And so there's a promotion code of TREAT10 to enter in when you order the essay guide. So those are, just some offerings of where else you can find some help, be it free or whether you want to purchase essay guides. But now I'd like to move into the question and answer part of this. So I'm going to, this is really sort of maxing out my technical skills. We're going to switch back to having it be me as opposed to slides. So here we go.
Great. Thank you, Katie, for the really great information about the Stanford admissions essays. We do have a couple questions from the audience, and so I'll go into them right now. And also, for the people in the audience right now, please feel free to submit questions through the Facebook or Twitter, basically through the Ustream window. I'll be looking at the questions and picking them out to ask Katie. So one of the questions that came up, Katie, was that one of the audience members asked, can you give some more concrete examples of an essay or maybe a story that someone would tell for the Stanford essay, as opposed, maybe perhaps a example of a person you worked with in the past, or do you have any concrete examples?
Yeah, so I can give an example of someone and talk a little bit about his first essay and his second essay. And this, I can't remember exactly which values he talked about, but in his first essay, he told stories about his family. And he had grown up with not very much money, and he'd been the only kid on scholarship at his private school that he went to. And he and his mom had to work very hard to make that happen. And he developed a lot of respect for his mom, integrity, a value of hard work, and also just this general championing of the underdog. And what mattered to him was helping people who needed help, basically. So his first essay was very much about his family and his upbringing. And now his second essay was about his career aspirations, obviously. And it was interesting, at the time that we worked together, he started volunteering. And he started volunteering with a group. He'd been doing consulting, and he thought he wanted to get into maybe finance. He wasn't really sure. He'd been doing consulting. He started volunteering with a group that did consulting for very small business owners, like one woman starting a jewelry design business, or a homeless individual starting a business. So he was working at basically a community center, giving business, tax, financial advice. And in doing so, he thought, I really love this. It was obviously just singing to that value of championing the underdog. And so his career aspiration was to work with and do consulting for small businesses, the kinds of businesses that employ much of America but fold very easily. So his second essay about the career aspirations was very much tied to his first essay about what he valued. So that's one example, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that was very helpful, actually. I have another couple of questions here, so I'll just read them for you. So one of our readers asks, should Essay 1 and Essay 2 from Stanford be linked together, or is it better to separate the ideas and have different stories to tell for Essay 1 and 2?
Yeah, there should be different stories. So they should be linked in that thematically your values tie over, and what you say is important to you is reflected in your career goals. If you say that, it's hard for me to even think, but if you say that your values are around, community or, and then have a career goal that doesn't at all reflect then that doesn't make sense to them. They don't see you as a complete person. there's one applicant, sometimes when I do presentations, we do these case studies, and there was one applicant who, her values were very much around the environment and taking care of the environment. And she applied to another school, not working with Stacey Blackman, and talked all about her career in finance that she wanted to have. She was working at a bank, and she thought, it makes more sense to just tell this banking story. And then she, second round, came to work with Stacey. She wasn't my client. She worked with somebody else. But then told the true story, which was that she wanted to have a career focused on the environment. So, again, don't have your personal life, what matters most to you, say one thing, and then your career say something else. So in that sense, they should be linked. However, I think it's great to share different stories. To share something more personal for what matters most to you, and then to share something more professional for your career aspirations. A lot of times people think they can't write personal things or talk about their family and their background and how they grew up or experience they've been through, but that's how people get to know people. I mean, think about when you're getting to know someone, you want to learn those things about them. And the admissions committee is just a group of people trying to get to know you. So I think that answers the linking question, but there was a second question. What was it? Or not?
That was pretty much the question that was asked.
Okay.
I do have a couple more questions here. So several readers or viewers have asked, how do you explain the inconsistent or not so good GPA? Is that something you should explain in an essay, or how would you approach that?
So, sorry, the audio was a little chopped up to me just then. How do you explain a low or inconsistent GPA?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Well, first there are some practical ways to address a low GPA or an inconsistent GPA on your track record. And so I'll talk about those first, and I'll talk about writing about those things. So just to address them, try to get a good GMAT score. Fortunately, beat the GMAT, so that should be of help. But try to get a solid GMAT score. Recognize that your GMAT score often reflects just your background. So, for example, I was very humanities-oriented. I've been a writer type my whole life, and my quant was quite low, but my overall score was pretty high, and that was fine with Stanford. I was just invited to math camp, same with Harvard. So they recognize that we all have strengths and weaknesses. But if you have a low GPA, try to get a good GMAT score. Take it more than once. Show them that you're trying. Also, you want to, look at your record and see if maybe you have low grades in quantitative topics that might be on the agenda at business school. And if that's the case, you might want to take a class at a community college or an extension school just to show them that you can do those things now. And then you also want to have your recommenders speak to your intellectual capabilities and your achievement orientation. When people, and I know this from my time at Teach for America, when you see a low GPA, you wonder, is this individual not intellectually oriented? Do they not care about their classes? Are they lazy? So you want to have your recommenders show that you're not. But in terms of explaining it, there's sort of two ways to do it. In some cases, that low GPA or inconsistent GPA is part of a much larger story of something that you were going through during that time in college. And if that's the case, that low GPA or inconsistent GPA might need to come out in another essay that's about something else. So, for example, I've seen essays about suffering from depression, taking care of an ill family member, a car accident that was serious and changed someone's life. And within those essays about those topics was also this little nugget explaining that that's why the GPA was off during college. Now, other people might bring it up in a way just addressing, a lot of times that low GPA is just because people were partying a lot in college, or when they first got there, they were so excited and they were overwhelmed by it. And in which case, maybe that comes up in one of your other essays, or you could just write a short thing, an additional essay that's like, hey, I made this mistake. I'm looking forward to business school as a chance to do this differently and flex my academic muscles that I didn't get to do during college so much. So you can address that short and sweet. There was one other thing I was thinking of with this. Larger essay story, if it was part of, it'll come back to me. What was it, though, that I wanted to say? It'll come back to me, and I'll shout it out in a couple of minutes, I'm sure. But those are ways in which you can actually talk about the GPA. Oh, this is the one I thought of. A lot of times people have a low GPA because they were like pre-med or they started, in engineering and then they switched to a different major. And that might come up when you're talking about your career aspirations, how they've unfolded over time, that, that I started college pre-med, and then that, and maybe not even that subtle, my GPA reflected that this wasn't the right fit for me. So you could actually address it head on. The GPA, if there's issues with it, as with anything, if you're worried about it and you see red flags there, they will also see those flags. So you want to address things head on. Remember, they're looking for that self-awareness. Okay, that was a long-winded answer.
Oh, no, that's really great, Katie. I mean, I know that a lot of people are stressed about how to present their scores and their GPA in the best light possible. And so thank you very much for your explanation about different techniques you can use to explain your GPA. Another question that came up, and this is not so much about essays, is one of our members is interested in changing a career to go to marketing instead, and so is wondering how good Stanford is as a sort of a launch pad for a marketing career.
Oh, I think Stanford's great, and there's a professor that you should get to know. Her name is Jennifer Ocker, and you should Google her because I think she's got some cool videos up on YouTube right now. She does fantastic research. Personally, she's a lovely, wonderful woman who's incredibly smart and gives all kinds of great life advice on top of marketing. Her classes are dynamic, and she's just absolutely wonderful. So, yeah, I think Stanford's a great place. There are a lot of people there that were interested in marketing, and many people had come from larger companies and then even went back to them, and many people changed. But, with any of these, and again, just Google, if you go to the Stanford faculty page, you can find Jennifer Ocker, starts with an A. With many of these schools, the top schools, they're good at all the stuff. They're all general management programs. I mean, they may have focuses within them that you can, like I did a public management concentration, but really it was a general management focus. So, and there are lots of electives, so you can really shape your career path, through your electives. But I think Stanford's great for marketing. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Another question that came in is, one of our viewers is interested in doing a career change from marketing to nonprofits, and so is that okay before going to business school? And if so, what's the best way to show it in the essay later on?
What's the best way to show it in the essay that that's what you're interested in?
Yep. How would you, I guess the question is not totally clear, but might be, how do you best cast that change of career in an essay?
Yeah, and I'll just talk to career changing in general. It's a big reason why people go to business school. It's a wonderful reason to go to business school. You're going to be exposed to new careers, people who have been in these careers, academic subjects that can help you understand these careers, a career resource center to help you. I mean, there's just a lot of help, okay? So it's a good reason to go to school. And a change from marketing to nonprofit, great. A change from anything to anything, great. They just want to understand why. So this all, again, goes back to the why. What is it about your life, your values, the experiences that you've had? What have you learned? What have you seen that are making you want to change your career to nonprofit? And is it just nonprofits in general? Is there some very specific cause that you're interested in? And if there is a specific cause, what is it about that cause? What is it about your life that makes that cause important to you? So I think that you would get into that, maybe some of your values would come up in the first essay, but in the second essay with your career aspirations, you can focus very much on, a change that's happened, what you've seen in marketing, what's important to you in your life that you just talked about in the first essay, and the career that you want to chart using Stanford. Stanford's awesome for nonprofits. A wealth of classes and classmates who are interested in that, professors as well. I think it's just a great place to go for that.
Great, thank you. Another viewer has asked, so she's had some difficulty in the last year because she has fibromyalgia and therefore hasn't been able to work for last year, but she has about 4 years of work experience. Is that okay? And can she now go to Stanford or apply at Stanford because she's better?
Yeah, it is okay. I would tell them about your fibromyalgia. It's and how and what you learned from that. That's an incredible. Of the many hats I wear besides yoga teacher, I'm also a life coach and a holistic health counselor, so I know a little bit about that. It's an incredible thing to overcome and to have to deal with, kind of chronic pain. So, you can tell them about how that's changed you. I'm going to guess that that's changed what you even want to do and shaped your life. And, you know, we get lessons handed to us so that we can learn something from them and move forward in a way that helps us give back to other people. So I'm going to guess there's some important wisdom in that year that you've spent going through that. So while it wasn't a year that you were working in a traditional sense, it's a year that you were learning things about yourself and the world and how you can contribute to the world. So you can very much speak to that in your essays. You know, that might be a whole topic for one of those essays in the third group. You know, there might be a creative way to put it into one of those essays even. Or perhaps it just comes out in the first. But it's fine to tell them about that. You know, this goes back again to that point that the admissions committee are just people who want to understand what's happened to you. And oftentimes people have things like a job change because their spouse got relocated somewhere else, and they don't mention that, and then the admissions committee is left wondering, why did they change their job? So things like, you know, family, personal reasons, just the reasons why you do stuff matter, and just explain it to schools.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
A couple people have asked about whether there's any such thing as too much work experience. So one person said they feel that the average age is going down over time, and so does that mean you have too much work experience to get into business school?
Yeah, you know, it's the reality of your life. You know, there's a reason why now that you feel it's the right time for you to apply to business school. And this question always makes me a little bit sad because I feel like don't wish you were 4 years younger. You've learned things, and that's good. And there are plenty of people in my class who were older than 28, you know, in their 30s and 40s and had kids and families. And they are taking applicants younger. I think a lot of that is because they found they were losing applicants to just the work world, and they weren't taking the time to go back to school, and they were missing out on great people. And so they, you know, opened the door for those people to go at a younger age. I think a lot of people also know what they want to do, and so they apply earlier in their career because if you know what you want to do, well, then why not start it at the highest level you can? But, you know, as someone who's 36 and had so many careers in a way at this point, I understand that it also takes a lot of living life to know who you are and what you want to do, and that wisdom and those experiences are extremely valuable to your classmates. I will say that they'll want to see progression in terms of your responsibilities, and I'd also say progression in terms of your self-reflection and self-awareness on how you've ended up wanting to go to business school now after these years.
Great, thank you. I'm going to throw you perhaps a softball question, but someone asked, is Stanford a good place for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's like the place for entrepreneurs. So, yes, it absolutely is. There's so many, classes, programs with other schools at Stanford, it's like an incubator environment, that whole place there. I feel like everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. And I'll say this. So you don't want to be just another entrepreneur applying to Stanford. You want to know why Stanford has what you need, the area, the other programs at the university. You also want to explain why entrepreneurship is well suited to your personality and your values and your skill set. And it's sort of the place to go for that in many, many ways. There's something else that I thought about. I'm having this issue. I shouldn't have revealed my age. Maybe my age is making answers escape me. But in terms of the entrepreneurship, it'll come back to me. It is the place to go.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, I have a friend who I have a couple of friends who are good friends who went to Stanford GSB. And
I just thought of my thing. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them started a software company 10 years ago, and they're about to go public. So I mean, it's a great place for entrepreneurship, I think.
That's cool. I just remember the thing I was going to say.
Okay.
And this is sort of horrible that I forgot it, but it's the thing that I learned most at business school. And the thing that I learned most at business school is that you create your life. And so, and I don't know if that's true of every business school, but at Stanford, I really got that message and felt it. From classes outside of even the traditional academic offerings and classes that even had to do with entrepreneurship, this idea that you create your life. So in that sense, business school in general is very entrepreneurial because you'll just feel you'll have this network of people who are ready to help you, your friends. You'll feel very connected to the professor still. I'm still very close with a professor who taught creativity in business, and as I went to write my books, he was a really important source of support and information for me. Or Jennifer Offer, who I mentioned before, was actually the person that introduced me via email to YogaWorks, where I ended up getting my yoga certification and becoming a teacher. So you never know, but just the whole atmosphere is one of doing, creating, making, being, living. It's very vibrant. So even if you didn't think you were going to start your own business, you might end up doing that after you go there.
That's great. That's great. So I have another question that came up, which is, is it, so another interesting question is it appropriate to tell a story about what you have learned from recovering from bipolar disorder?
Yes, I think it is appropriate. I think, this is a big one. As so many applicants wonder, can they talk about really difficult things they've been through in their lives? I write about this a lot in the book, actually, because over the years I've seen so many powerful essays that come from these types of situations, health situations, just general life challenges. And yes, you can write about them. The key in doing so is in the execution and how you write about them. And I would focus not on the situation, but what you've learned. So set up the situation, explain what was going on, but how you grew and how you learned. Because a lot of times when we write about challenging situations, it's very easy to get caught in victim mode. And that's just, again, general in life. A lot of times when we're in a challenging situation, it's very easy to get caught in victim mode and blame everybody else for what's happened with you. And find some self-awareness and sense of personal responsibility in your writing that will also help you find those things in your life when you write about situations like this. So rather than getting caught in victim mode, but go to what you've learned and how it's helped you move forward. As I mentioned to the other woman before with the fibromyalgia question, these dark and difficult lessons and times that we go through in life are rich for learning. I mean, those, trees grow in the valley, and it is in those places that we really develop our character and figure out who we are. So a lot of those kinds of topics are good for essays. But focus on, what came out, what grew, what are the trees from those experiences.
Got it. Great. Another question that came in is, about word counts. And, this viewer hasn't seen the word count, and so wasn't sure how long the essay should be. So was wondering if you can give some advice about how long they should be.
Oh, they lay it, I forget off the top of my head. They lay it out clearly, word count, page length. They will tell you. And I would stick to it. I would stick to it for two reasons. One, they've got a lot to read. You don't want to make them mad. But also, as I've seen over the years of editing gazillion essays, is that when you trim them down, better things happen. It forces you to be clear with your words and with your content, and that's good writing practice. I mean, HBS is more notorious than Stanford for word count, and those ones are just a beast in trying to cut them down. I remember from when I went through it with all my clients, but once you do, it's always like a sharper, more polished, and just, it's like, boom, the essay really hits you. So, follow the word count, be good.
Great. That's great advice. Another viewer asked that he's thinking about taking a year off to do another master's degree before applying to business school. And so is that bad for his business school application if he takes a year off to do a master's degree instead of working and getting more work experience?
Yeah, I know. People always ask these questions about, is doing this in my life a bad thing for my business school application? And I would just say, is it a good thing for your life? Because if it's what you want to do with your life, then you should do it. There's no guarantees. There's no guarantees you'll get into school or that you won't get into school. Don't base your life around applying to business school. And the flip side of that is that actually when you live that way, when you do what you want to do, you're building a better application for business school because they want to see that you're self-aware and engaged in what you're interested in. So I think going and doing a master's degree can be great. You want to show them that you're engaged with the world and not just stuck in a library. So how are you involved in your master's degree, or what brought you to that place to want to study it, and how would it complement your studies at business school? Why is it necessary to do both? Just be able to explain those things to school, and you should be able to explain those things to yourself if you're going to going to.
Got it. We have time for two more questions. So in the first question, I'm just going to aggregate a bunch of different comments people asked. There's several people who've asked, basically, should I even bother applying to Stanford if my scores on the test, like the GMAT, weren't as high as I think they should be? So one person said, should I even bother applying if I got less than 700? So how important are the GMATs and the other test scores for getting to Stanford?
I think test scores are important, but they're part of your overall story. So, test scores are important, especially if you have a low GPA, because you want to be able to show them, like I said, that you have the capability to do well at their school. But they're just a part of the story. So I think you should look at your test scores in your overall story and see, do they make sense? Does my verbal quant breakdown make sense with who I am and what I've studied and what my job is and just my natural strengths and weaknesses? Does this score show that I've been lazy and only took the test once and I could have done better if I'd taken it again? So look at your score in terms of what it's saying within your overall story. But I'll also say that a lot of times we don't want to take the test again. Applicants are really resistant to it, but the majority of the people that I've seen and talked to and worked with over the years have taken the test more than once. So while that's horrible to hear right when you're in the thick of it, you just do it, you buckle down, you get it out of the way, and then it's done, and you never have to think about it again.
I'm sure that many viewers would look forward to the day when they can put the GMAT behind them because that's a painful test. So for the final question, this is actually very interesting. One viewer said, the essays are by nature introspective. How do you make them not appear arrogant or egocentric?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think self-awareness and introspection is by nature egocentric. I think that you can show what you've learned, often with great humility. Like we said, that sometimes that learning comes at the cost of not having succeeded in a situation. But I think it's looking at your tone, and it's okay to talk about yourself. It's okay to be introspective and self-aware. But check your tone and see if you're making this a story that you're just like your nervous ego part of you is just writing to make yourself look great, or are you actually writing from a genuine reflective part of you, from a clear sense of mind as opposed to just an achievement-oriented ego? You can tell when the ego is taking over because you'll start just writing an editorialized version of your resume, just listing all your accomplishments, and you can tell when it's actually coming from your head, heart, and clear mind when you're actually affected emotionally by your essays, when they feel real. When reading it, you feel emotions come up. My friends from Stanford and I joke that, that first essay should make you laugh and make you cry. And that's not an exaggeration. When something's real, it will elicit a response. So reading the essay, writing the essay should involve an emotional response from you. And it shouldn't just be a list of your, what's on your resume, because that's when it tends to sound more arrogant. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, you've provided such great information about this whole session, so thank you very much. We really appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we really appreciate your insights and your answers. And just for the viewer's sake, if there's any questions that you wanted to ask but couldn't ask, or I couldn't ask because we ran out of time, please be sure to go to the forum and ask. You can post a question that asks Stacey Blackman Consulting Forum, or you can even contact them directly as well. And so please feel free to ask. And also, we will be posting the video of this session on our website either today or tomorrow. So are there any closing remarks, Katie?
I just want to say, good luck to everyone. Make this process about learning about yourself, and in doing so, you will put forth your strongest application. It's an incredible opportunity to get to know who you are and explain that to schools and just clarify your purpose in life. So best of luck to you.
Thank you. And one last announcement for everyone who's on the show, watching us today. Actually, two announcements. First, please come back next week because we have two more great sessions for the Business School Admissions Essays. We have them for the next, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, and so we'd love to have you at every single session. Second, please be sure to check out the Beat the GMAT website because we have a great, huge giveaway called the Beat the GMAT 100K Challenge, where our top prize actually will be a 5-city or 5-school tour where we're going to take you to HBS, Sloan, MIT Sloan, Haas, and Stanford, and one school of your choice for the grand prize winner. Yeah, we'll be flying the grand prize winner from anywhere in the world to those 5 schools, and Eric and I will personally be giving a guided tour of the schools, as well as guaranteeing two students from each of the schools to meet with the grand prize winner. So please check out our site, pre-register. We really want you guys to try it to get that prize. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Katie.